Welcome back to another episode of the Creative Finance Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Jen.
I'm Joe.
And today we are covering that it is such a crazy world that we're living in with these high interest rates. How is it even possible that anyone could structure low monthly payments with really, feasible interest rates? Because if you walk into any bank right now, what are we even looking at?
Yeah, so if you're walking to the bank right now and you want to buy a big old piece of real estate, small old piece of real estate, don't matter. You're still going to pay 7-8%, which is high, right? So what I've realized is when you put that price of today's real estate with those interest rates, then you add in the tax, you add in the insurance. Some properties, they might even have an HOA. Then you're going to have to worry about maintenance and management. Your negative cash flow, probably I would say 9 out of 10 deals, if not even more.
And you are all about creating cash flow.
Hey, if you're watching right now, you see the shirt. If you're listening, I got my shirt, cash flow, everything around me. Okay.
So we are not the investors that are going to tell you to go buy a piece of real estate and wait to make that money. We want you to be able to cash flow even with these crazy prices today.
Yeah. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we negotiate the monthly payments with sellers on these free and clear properties. So we're going to go over some of the strategies that we've used on some real case studies, and then we're going to go over some objections that we hear during this and how you could actually make a win for the seller and yourself as the buyer. And, I've got some of these that we're working on right now. I've got Lexi on our team, and she's got a handful of these properties. And one of the things that I always tell Lexi is I love free and clear properties. And so a fun little statistic is that 40% of all of the houses across the USA are owned outright, owned free and clear. They don't have a mortgage on them. These are free and clear properties.
Joe, won't they all want all of their money?
A lot of them will. So a lot of them will, but not all. And so that's where we're creating some of these wins, because sometimes, they might have a free and clear property and they might want all of their money. That's not uncommon, guys. But we're not talking about your average seller. We're talking about motivated sellers.
Boom.
And so there's a big difference there. And motivation could mean all different types of things. It doesn't always have to be financial issues. It could be just the stress of getting this property off their back. And so we're going to go over seller Steve. This was the first free and clear property that we did that was, he didn't have a mortgage on it. Now, Steve's motivation was he inherited his grandfather's home. He had a lot of sentimental value to the property. It wasn't a fixer-upper. It wasn't that junker. His concern was he didn't want to sell it on the market. He didn't want to have people going through in and out of his grandfather's house. He actually had it rented to one of his coworkers, a buddy of his, that he was basically not even charging him for rent. He was, but it was so small, it was basically free. And he just wanted to get this thing sold. So I know the first time I talked with Steve, he said, I don't want some lowball offer because, this is a house that meant a lot to me and it doesn't really need anything. And so I agreed. I actually agreed with him. I was like, you know what? I could see why you wouldn't want a lowball offer. And on a house like this, there's no need to. I could pay your price. And the minute I said I could pay your price, his ears perked right up. I had his attention. And so what I explained was that I could pay your price if you're going to let me do it on terms, which means I'll buy it. I'll cover all of the closing costs and fees. I'm going to buy it as is. I don't need a bank inspection. I don't need an appraisal. I don't need my mom, dad, uncle, mailman, none of these people to walk through the property. I'm here to do business. I could buy it as is. And this was a nice house. It didn't need anything. I think we painted a few rooms and took out an old couch because we do buy as is. So once we agreed on his price, here's the big thing for me. I told him I typically buy with no money down, okay? And he's like, okay. And that was it.
It was that easy.
It was that it.
Yeah, that was not his big hook. His thing was his price and not having a bunch of people walking through Grandpa's house.
Yeah, so this is why I love creative finance, especially seller finance, owner finance, when these are free and clear properties, because the price to me is really not even that, it doesn't matter. I could pay your price. So he walked away high five, hug, love you guys. You paid my price. Mission accomplished. I don't have to pay any real estate commissions. He didn't have to pay any fees. He was loving it. So here's what I did now to figure out what I could pay him per month. Because I said, Steve, if I pay, and this is exactly, so if you're listening, you might want to write this down. Steve, if I pay the taxes and the insurance and take care of all the maintenance and repairs, what's the least you would take for the monthly payment? I know, right?
And then you sit and you wait in silence.
Right? That sounded really hard. What's the least you would take for the monthly payment? And he gave me his number. He said, $1,000.
I think it was a little higher, yeah.
Yeah, he said, can you pay $1,000? Now, guys, this thing only rented for like $1,400, so I couldn't do that because don't forget, I also have to pay tax and insurance. So I said, Steve, I can't do that, but I can pay $500 a month because don't forget, on top of $500 a month, I also have to pay the taxes and insurance. And then I want to rent it, and then I need to make a few bucks per month on top of that. So what did I do is I explained it to him so then he understood it. I just didn't say, I can't do that.
Right.
I didn't try to say anything else. I just explained to him, I think you could rent for this, but I got to pay taxes, which are that. I have to pay insurance, which is approximately this. So then if I have to pay you, this is what I could pay. So here's some things, though, to think about is when you're working out that deal, you have to see what the property is assessed for. Before I work out some of these deals, and I really need to make sure I'm doing my numbers, I need to know what the taxes are per year. Right? What is the house assessed for versus if I buy it, what will my taxes go up to? Because there could be a big swing, right? If a house is assessed at $120,000, but I'm buying it at $250,000, well, guess what? When after I close, the town's going to come in and say, well, you bought it at $250,000. We need to raise your taxes now. And so if you don't do that ahead of time, you might be thinking you've got cash flow and it could turn bad quick, right? So you always want to make sure you do your due
It's like
diligence.
a pro tip right there.
That's nobody. I don't hear nobody else talking about that. And then the second thing is when I do call the town, I usually talk to the tax assessor. I introduce myself. I tell them who I am. I let them know that I'm going to buy this property and I'm going to turn it into a rental property. Because also, too, I want to make sure they understand I'm not going to get the homestead tax discount, which means if you're going to live in this house, it's going to be your primary residence, which means you get a discount on your taxes. So I'm going to let them know I'm planning on buying the house. This is my price, and I'm going to rent it. What will my taxes go to per year, and when will that happen? That's a big, major tip you're hearing right there. And you got to do that on every one of these deals to make sure you don't get where you think you have cash flow, and then all of a sudden you've got negative cash flow. Because guys and girls listening, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful thing to have a free and clear property and be able to negotiate these terms, but those are a few extra steps that are really huge that you just gave away. So thank you for that.
Yeah, well, because the thing is this is why I love free and clear properties. I could back into the payment and I could make it cash flow if the seller is flexible. So if I'm buying a property and it has an existing mortgage on it and the seller's open to me buying it and letting the loan say in his name, whether we buy or her name, whether we're buying a wrap or subject to, doesn't matter. I can't negotiate that payment.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's either going to cash flow or it's not.
Right.
Once you put insurance on the property.
Correct.
But with this, now you have the extra layer, which I want to get into, interest.
Okay. So,
Because here is where a lot of people, they get stumped because all of a sudden now, if it's a savvy seller, maybe an investor himself or herself, like they might want a high interest rate. So that could be a hurdle for some of our listeners.
yeah. So one of the things, like I just had one recently, and they wanted some really high rate and they wanted all this money down. And I said, well, what do you think the property would rent for? And they told me it was $2,500 a month. I said, well, if I give you $60,000 down, which I'm not going to, but that's what you're asking, and I put in the interest rate that you want, my payment's $3,000 a month. So
What was their response?
that's my price. That's my rate. If you don't want it, don't buy the house. Guys, I was off that call 30 seconds after he said
Right.
that, right? Because once again, I'm dealing with a unmotivated seller who has unrealistic expectations. I don't waste my time dealing with ones and twos and threes on motivation. I want to find a 9 and 10, somebody who's actually truly motivated. So you got to remember that majority of the people that you talk to, probably 8 out of 10, aren't motivated, aren't willing to talk to you about this stuff. And that's totally okay. I'm not looking for them.
But there is a seller, Steve, who was extremely motivated. He kind of thought like we were a little bit of like a blessing in disguise. When he opened up our letter that he got, he was like, oh my gosh, like you guys are making this so simple. Like it's been weighing on me. I want to sell this property, but I just didn't want to go through all the hassle. So how did you even bring up the topic of interest rate with that $500 a month, which I don't even know if we talked about what you got him down to.
Yeah, we got him down to $500. So I said, Steve, I can't pay $1,000 a month because I paid the tax and insurance on top of that. So I can pay you $500 a month for the payment. He says, okay, that would work. And I said, okay, and that's going to go towards what I owe you every month. So if I pay 12 payments a year, at $500, that means $6,000 per year is going to come off the balance of what I bought the property for. And you know what he said?
Okay.
Okay, that works for me. Let's go ahead and do it. So I said, deal. So I said, Steve, I'm going to do this paperwork. I'm going to meet you tomorrow, and we're just going to look it over. If it's what we just agreed on, we're going to okay it. Okay the paperwork. We're not signing it because that sounds scary. Okaying the paperwork seems a lot easier. So I went to McDonald's. I met him there. I remember sitting there all nervous. This is my first creative finance deal, right? I've done a lot of other deals, but this is my first back in 2017. And I just left work at my car dealership.
Was it your first off market too? What?
I don't know. I got to think more now about that. No, it wasn't.
Okay.
But this was my first seller finance deal. And so I met him at McDonald's because it was close to my dealership. I still had all my like work clothes on. And I sat there and I don't know why. I ordered a coffee. I don't even drink coffee, but I was nervous. So I sat down. He comes in like 5 minutes later, shake his hand. I've shown him the agreement. And it says, here's your price. That's the payment. And does all look good? He was like, yeah, it looks good to me. I was like, okay, I just need your signature right there. He signed it. I'm like, okay, but Steve, now you have to take this $100 deposit. And he's like, no, I don't want that. I'm like, yeah, but you got to have it because in my mind as an investor, I know I have to give him a deposit to make the deal legal. Yeah. So I fought him over the deposit. He finally took it. I told him, take your wife out to dinner. Guys, we made the deal. So here's the thing you got to make sure. You got to explain to your sellers, I'm paying your price, and the way I get paid and stretch that much is because I have to have a payment that works for me. That's how I'm able to pay your price. And in the long run, all it is just a delayed cash sale for full price. You wouldn't believe how many times I explain that to a seller and like, oh, you're right. I'm like, yeah, and you're not going to make any more money than you would with me because there's no commissions. I'm going to pay both sides of the closing costs, my side and the seller side, and that's going to save them some money. So if I'm able to pay your price, buy it as is, close whenever you want, and then just start sending you some mailbox money every month until I get it cashed out later on. After that, it was like gold, guys. So since then, we've been able to do multiple deals the same exact way. Some of these I've had an interest rate where they want some 8%, and I say, nope, I don't pay interest because that's a taxable event, and most people don't want to pay more in taxes. But then I get the ones for 1.5% or 2%.
So you're never throwing out the number for interest rate?
No, absolutely not. And I hear some people say, oh, well, what if I were to pay you a 6%? Ugh. Okay, if you're a really good negotiator, you're going to ask great questions, have the seller make you the offer. Don't just put your foot in your mouth throwing out what you're willing to do. Because I always say I don't pay interest. And then if they want something, I say, nope, I can't do that. Maybe like 1%, 1.5%. No, I need 7. How's 2? Right?
Right.
Because I'm paying your price and I'm covering the closing costs. So once you start having those negotiations, I'm not making the offer. They're making me the offer. I'm counter offering their offer. And that's if you look at like read all the books about negotiating. I've been in sales for 25 years, guys. I've been doing this my whole life. If you look at all of the books, read everything they talk about is you have the other party make the offer first. Ask questions, have them make you the offer. Don't put your offer out there first because you don't win that way. So this are the strategies on free and clear properties, how to actually get really great deals, that cash flow, guys. So if you're listening to this, rewind it, take some more notes, and then go into action. Get some leads, start having these conversations with people. Don't forget, 4 out of 10 houses are owned free and clear. So you can always cash flow on a free and clear property as long as the seller is flexible with the monthly payment. And they should be, because I'm paying their price. So that concludes today's episode of Creative Finance Playbook podcast, talking about how to negotiate that monthly payment on a free and clear property. One of my favorite deals, and guys, find these deals yourselves. These can be life-changing.
Absolutely. And if you want more help with constructing your deal, analyzing them, and putting them together, head over to creativefinanceplaybook.com, schedule a call with Joe. We'd love to hop on and see if there's any sort of way we can help you out with these deals because they are out there. Like you said, 4 out of 10.
4 out of 10.
That's crazy.
40%. There's a lot of them out there.
Amazing. So until next time, we'll see you later and go do some deals.
Thank you, guys.